You're basically asking them, hey, can you recreate everything that I just poured every detail into and all my craft? Can you just recreate that magically? Not even visually, but just writing code. That's kind of like an insane ask to have of engineers.
The process where a PM creates a product requirement stock, that is starting to go away. There's now a lot of organizations that they don't do that. All the steps are collapsing, and it's just becoming one more streamlined thing.
No more handoffs, no more translating, no more asking to redraw something in code. You could just build it.
Phil, welcome to the show.
Hey, Aydin, great to be here.
Excited to do this with you. You have a super interesting background. You've done, I think, some audio engineering work. You've done design work. You're now a co-founder of a super fast-growing company that everyone's talking about. And very curious to get your take on AI and have you show us some really cool things. But before we begin, who are you? What do you do?
Wow, you were really going back through the LinkedIn archives. Audio engineering was actually my first kind of passion. I actually think it is such a good parallel to design. I think it's what got me into design, which is what I'm doing now, because it's kind of in that middle ground, similarly to designing software these days, where it's a very creative field, right? You are working, for example, with music and you're shaping sound, but it's also equally technical, right? There's interfaces that you have, tools that you have to learn that are highly professional and technical. There's, right ways, wrong ways of doing things. And there's a very high bar for craft that's an execution. And that's actually what got me into design and figuring out that hey, there are, interfaces to shape, tools that really enable more creative stuff, but ultimately to create things in the world. And so I got into design via actually a technical background too, with computer science and actually learning how to, build software. And then art, which was more of a creative outlet, studio art, and design kind of fell in the middle, right? And really, since then, I've been wearing that design hat first, but a pretty generalist hat. I definitely consider myself kind of a builder. And I think that's really where things are going, right? That's what led me to want to start a company in this space, especially. And I think with AI these days, a lot of those technical constraints, right? The barriers for people to actually start building are really being washed, away. And I think a lot more people, whether it's product people, whether it's business people, whether it is engineers, designers, right, marketing people, you can really start putting on that builder hat and really bringing ideas to life.
And it's interesting. We've gone through these builder evolutions in other phases of the internet too, right? Just even thinking back to the early days of building a website. Now it's easy to do that. You can build websites. There was the Squarespaces of the world, and then came the Webflows, and before that there was like the Dreamweavers. But everybody started to be able to build their own website. All of a sudden, you didn't need to have a degree in computer science to do it. And similarly with other things, I mean, Shopify now allows you to build an e-commerce site and so on and so forth. And so we're definitely getting there now in the age of apps. And so you started a company called Subframe, just so that everybody's aware. What does Subframe do?
Yeah, Subframe is pretty much a design tool for building products. So specifically software, right? So we really focus on building the UI and the UX of an app. It feels like a design tool, which means there's, drag and drop and visual editing, things that people that are designers are familiar with. But the main key difference is that it's completely rooted on the foundation of code. Everything that you're working and interacting with, you're actually sculpting and molding the underlying code for, the app that you're building. And of course, because of that, since AI came along on the scene, we've really been able to integrate it, in a way that I think um, really lets people, have AI as a kind of creative partner to what you're doing. And that's again because large language models are really good at writing code. not so much at some other multimodal things and understanding design. And we kind of bridge that gap. And so we've basically built Subframe to, yeah, be a design tool that helps people design and ship things. And AI is there sort of when you need it, really understands what you're working on, is really contextual, but is also not there when you don't, where you're able to kind of do things yourself in a WYSIWYG editor.
Let's kind of talk about the problem space a little bit that you are tackling. So one of the things that I know you've talked a lot about is this idea of design to engineering handoffs. Maybe you can talk about what that typically looks like. And so anyone who works in a software company or even uses software, this is kind of the process that people have been using. I mean, for at least a few decades now, in order to build software. So maybe you can talk through that and why it's broken or how people should think about it.
If you think of like designers, for example, and graphic designers, you spend time, creating a poster, let's say, right? And you pick the fonts, you design the layout, you have all the colors, everything looks good. When you're done, you click print and it's done, right? Like you've produced the thing that you're designing. Even though we call product designers, software designers, also designers, you're not actually doing that. You're working a lot more like an architect, which means you're just drawing blueprints, right? You're drawing pictures, you're creating a vision of what you want to build, but then you can't actually build it yourself, right? Because software needs engineers to code it, right? And actually ship it. And so designers have been stuck in that middle space where you spend so much time creating like a perfect vision and exactly what the thing is supposed to look like and feel like, and then you have to ask an engineer, someone who didn't become a designer, who probably doesn't like to do design and doesn't see those same details, right, that you were hired for. And you're basically asking them, hey, can you recreate everything that I just poured, right, minute, every detail into and all my craft? Can you just recreate that magically, not even visually, but just by writing code? That's kind of like an insane ask to have of engineers, right? To basically be these magicians that turn pictures into software. And that is really still how the process looks like today. We have design tools that are based essentially in vectors, drawing pictures, and designers hand that off to engineers to say, "Hey, can you build it?" And if you ever want to go make a change, you have to ask your engineer, "Hey, can you make a change?" And I think there's so many things, right, between the translation, between the knowledge gaps, the context, like, that can get lost in that, and that's why you often have biggest complaint for designers is, "Hey, you didn't build it the way I designed it." And so we're spending so much time, so much effort asking designers, right? We designers have been really working to sort of have their seat at the table, be part of the DNA of a company, and yet all they're doing is just drawing pictures, right? And can actually do it. So we really that was the first big problem that we wanted to solve. This is before AI. It's just what if designers, everything that you're doing, putting that button there, right, making that perfect card and layout. What if everything you were doing as you're designing was already written in code? That you were actually shaping that same material that's going to be built with. And so we built that first. We essentially tried to solve that design to code gap that, like you were saying, there's a long history of people trying to solve that, but with software, it's at building apps, it's a little bit different because a website is a lot more similar to that poster. You could just kind of publish it. But apps, right, they require a backend. They have, logic built into it. And so you really do have to work with engineers. It's just we want to give designers the ability to own the interface, the thing that they're actually responsible for, and really empower them to build what they dream of. So that was the main thing we worked, and this was before AI. We basically figured out a programmatic way to convert everything that you're doing visually into code that actually works. That's how we build Subframe itself. And of course AI makes that even easier these days. But yeah, that was the big big problem and the big shift of no more handoffs, no more translating, no more asking to, redraw something in code. You could just build it.
Hey everyone, just a quick pause on today's episode to tell you about my day job. In addition to This New Way, I'm the CEO of a company called Fellow.ai, and Fellow is an AI meeting assistant. It joins all your meetings, it summarizes them, tracks the action items and the decision, and does that better than any other tool that you've seen. We've spent a ton of time making sure that the meeting notes and summaries and action items that come out of Fellow are the most accurate, the most precise. It beats any human. You have to try it. But in addition to that, what makes Fellow different is that it is the first AI note taker built from the ground up with security and privacy in mind. This means that you can use it for all your meetings, not just the customer-facing ones, but also the sensitive ones, things like one-on-ones and executive team meetings and those QBRs and everything in between. It's got really good judgment. So for example, if you start a meeting and you're talking about some social stuff that you don't really want on the record that's going to get emailed to everyone afterwards, Fellow just knows. It just doesn't include those things. Or say you have something that you talked about and later on you realize, oh man, that shouldn't have been there. It makes it really easy. You can go back to the meeting, select that part, delete it, and then it's gone from the record. It connects to all of the other tools you use in the organization, whether that's Slack or Asana or HubSpot or Salesforce or Linear or Jira or Confluence, whatever it is, Fellow integrates with all those things. I think the best part is that Fellow also acts as an AI chief of staff. Because it sits on all the meetings and the conversations that you have access to, you can ask it really cool questions such as, what are the biggest opportunities in my company? What are the bottlenecks in engineering? And Fellow just pieces together information, sees trends, and it can answer those sorts of questions. It can even do things like, hey, based on all of the one-on-ones that I've had with this particular person, can you create them a performance review? And it can do things like that too. And the sky's really the limit. What I really wanted you to do is have the opportunity to try out Fellow, check it out, and we're making a special offer available to all our listeners. So just go to fellow.ai/thisnewway to try Fellow. There's a discount code in there for you if you decide to continue with it. Either way, I would love for you to try it and let me know what you think. And with that said, let's go back to the episode. The thing that interests me a lot about, everything Phil is talking about is this whole podcast is about the new way of working, right? That's why we call it This New Way. And so the thing that is becoming very apparent is that more people are becoming builders. And more often than not, people are not just sticking to a product requirements doc. So traditionally, a PM would create a document. That document would go to the designer would build something, and then maybe it gets to the engineers like you're discussing. And one thing that has changed is that the process where a PM creates a product requirements doc, that is starting to go away. There's now a lot of organizations that they don't do that. They just focus on prototypes. But then now there's the other handoff of, and they're interrelated, but there's this other handoff of design to engineering. And this is kind of like the thing that you guys are tackling. And so, again, as this collapses too, the trend here seems to be that more and more all the steps are collapsing. And it's just becoming one more streamlined thing that, again, if you think about software production as a factory, it's just like less steps, more automations that are happening, and making these transitions easier and easier. So this was kind of like the interesting thing for me. And does this mean, like, practically speaking, does this mean that you see a world, like, again, if you're fast forward, call it like 5 years, and I know 5 years is an insanely long time, we'll probably have AGI by then, but 5 years, so what happens? A designer builds something in a design tool like Subframe, and then the developers never build a front end ever again. It just goes straight to code, and that's that? Or how do you see it working?
That's where we're here now. We're already here today with something like Subframe, right? In 5 years, I hope to be sitting on a beach sipping a tropical drink while the agents, right, like do all that work for me. But no, I think that the foundation is really that, like you said, we're working with the same material, right? That this is we're a very collaborative tool, and we see PMs go into a tool like Subframe, prototype something, using more of a chat interface, right? Because they don't want to use a design tool and they don't want to look at the code. And you can basically create prototypes that, again, are using the same design that your designers have set up and the same code that your front end has set up. They can show that to a designer and say, hey, this is my initial version. What do you think? A designer can go into design tool mode, make all those tweaks, and the whole time you're just editing like the same file in code, right? But you change the mode. You're suddenly like, I want a visual way to modify this code, right? We went from a chat way to modify the code to a visual way to modify the code. And then you hand that code off to an engineer who's going to hook it up to the backend. I probably use a code agent for that as well. And now they're working with, hey, I need a text editor, right? And code and tab as my mode. But the real thing is that it's all happening with the same material the whole time. Everyone's just kind of doing their part. But fast forwarding a little bit more with, where I think tool technologies like AI can really do even more in that process, it really comes down to, I think a lot of our job is going to be about how do we shape the models as well. Like if that AI is helping us do, right, from docs and PRDs to prototypes to then designs and generating lots of interface ideas to then writing the code and hooking it up. How do we steer it to sort of be right what we're working with, right? The design language, the product requirements, the guidelines, and I think it's very similar to I just got a puppy. He's 12 weeks old, and he's just like a complete ball of chaos, but also just like a sponge in the world, right? He doesn't know anything. He's purely working on instincts. Large language models today are very similar. Their instincts is, everything that the foundation model has learned across the internet. Um, but you have to shape it, right? Suddenly you're like, that's no longer going to be the differentiator. That's just the baseline. I think our job is really about how can we tailor these models and reinforce them to work in the system that we want, right? How do we train them, not with treats, but just examples. And I think that's going to be where a lot of the value and like what we're trying to do in Subframe is really be like, how can you train and essentially teach your own AI model how you design and how the UX of your product is? That becomes really powerful and really valuable at the end of the day.
So what you're saying is, again, if I were to translate to junior designer that gets hired, they do some things, they get some feedback. The next time they build something, hopefully they take into account that feedback. And fast forward a few years, now you have an experienced designer that knows how to do things well in the constructs of the way that organization works. There's no reason why our AI like agents and models shouldn't learn in the same way and become like even better like over the course of time. And so that's what you see the future is. So every time we use the product, we give feedback, it gets better.
Yeah, but I think we're really crucial in helping shape that, right? I don't think it can do it on its own. There's just kind of a regression that can just happen, like, and you'll be stuck in a local sort of maxima. But with our role, especially the creative process as designers, right? And I mean, again, PMs too. Anyone who's thinking about what's the next thing that doesn't exist yet, I think it's really about you know us being the curators and sort of the directors in helping a model that might have so much context already actually not just help with the execution but really with that creative process as well.
So for today's demo, you have something unique that you're going to show us. So what are we going to see today?
I'm a big fan of Fellow and what you're doing. And I thought like, hey, what if we just jammed on your product and see how fast and easy it is to really come up with ideas to bring them even into code, and also really see how different working within an AI that's already starting to be trained is compared to something off the shelf.
Okay. So For everybody listening in, when Phil first said we're going to build features in Fellow, and Phil does not have access to our code base, we haven't collaborated on this in the past. I was very intrigued. So this idea of just building features on someone else's product, this seems really, really cool. So I'm excited to see what you've put together.
All right. Well, yeah, let's dive in a little bit. So this is the real fellow. This is your app. And of course, like you said, I don't actually have access to your code base right now and design system. Those are all things that we can actually hook up. But if I go to Subframe now and open up this page, you could see it's probably pretty. Maybe I can even edit this. It's pretty similar, right? Again, it's not everything is there. There's a lot that you could probably fix and tweak. But just being able, it took me a few minutes just to take all your colors, all of that base foundation design system stuff, drop in an image, and have our AI recreate this page right here in Subframe.
That's
Um,
super cool. So I have to ask you, what is that process? Maybe you can just describe it to it verbally. So you logged into Fellow, and then what did you do?
yeah, so logged into Fellow, was checking out right your site, and working on the design layer. Obviously, the interface is already here, so I can just go in and basically peek at something like your colors. So if I actually look and inspect, I should be able to find somewhere in here. Here's some weights, right? Here's like a list of colors down here. Your blue 300 is using this RGB value. And I was able to just copy and paste that, bring it into Subframe, and start setting up your design system to match these colors. So I was able to import these, and that's really where so much of design happens, is sort of building up that foundation and context, right? It starts with your theme. Right, again, your colors, not everything is here, your typography, matching those fonts that really changes the look and feel of how your app looks, and then starting to incorporate that into components. So obviously your buttons and your checkboxes, these are probably the ones that don't quite look exactly like yours, because I didn't go through this this part of the process, and this is actually right would be from your code base. But we give you all of this out of the box. So this really took a few minutes. I didn't have to create anything that new. I just had to update the theme to match. And then I went in and I asked our AI.
But did you like copy and paste the HTML to just get the structure, or
No, that's one thing. Yeah, where actually you can do. It does help. But what I did was then take this screenshot that you see on the right,
Mhm.
and I just said recreate this UI.
Oh,
Exactly.
wow, look at that. That's cool.
So you can see that his first version, right? It didn't have this gradient. You're actually using an image. But yeah, you could see this was the one shot that it did. I was able to apply this to the page. And then the magic really is that you should never be fighting the AI. If you know how to do something, and I'm a designer in this case, I can go in to design mode. And again, I could go in here, add this image. If these, are a different shade of purple, I can just select them and, let's do purple 600, just for the sake of it. If we need to move this over here, I can just move it. And this combination of using AI to do a lot of this high level work for you, but then being able to just go into the details to make things perfect. That's that partnership that we're really trying to build in here.
Yeah, so what's interesting about this, to me, just going back to the example of a lot of PMs are now creating prototypes, but the prototypes don't really look like the product.
Yep.
And so what I like about what you're showing here, and it's a little bit glimpse into the future, which is the prototype should look like the product. Like there's no reason why almost anybody in the company can't come up with an idea and then show it inside the current interface that exists. So once you've done this work, I assume like you do this throughout the product, throughout the pages, and then Like who typically gets access to this within the company?
Yeah, that pretty much, as you mentioned, the build team, right? Product design, engineering. I think it's sort of designers really own Subframe, because they're the ones who are now able to go in and be like, this is how our buttons look like, right? And they can define and say, maybe fellow, it'd be cool if you had circular buttons. I can make this change from a design standpoint, and we're actually updating the code that will be synced to your code base. So I think designers really own Subframe, but it becomes design, like we said, right? Design lives in the middle. PMs come in here and are able to just say, you know, let's we could go into this now. Like, let's add a feature to this page, and it's going to have all that context that the designers have set up. And then an engineer is going to go in and say, this design is ready for a new feature. Great. Let me just grab the code right here. That's already basically done and updated in real time as you work. So that's that process of really, again, the roles blending, how we talked about, and collaboration, bringing people together. We really see this as in Subframe.
That's very cool. So you make the changes. So you're saying like the way that this would work is it automatically syncs to the code base. Can you explain how that works?
To get into sort of those specifics, we basically, if people are familiar with design systems, component libraries, a lot of these things here, like our buttons, those are components. Those are really reusable pieces of code. And for something like a component, like here, alert with a button, we have a sync command that keeps these things up to date. That means, to what you were saying before, front end engineers never have to write the code for a button again. It basically just gets added to their code base. And then the page code itself, this is really kind of like, it's also an important distinction, is we're not trying to build the full stack app in here, right? Like, that is something that has exponentially higher levels of complexity to actually make it work. That often gets in the way of designing, right? Because if I actually just wanted to see what this looks like here and add a button that says, record the meeting, like, it's really easy on the design side to do this. But this would take hours or maybe days, right, of work to actually build that feature. And so we really draw the line at the front end, which we believe design can own. And basically, that code is something that gives engineers the boilerplate, is something they can use to refactor existing pages. But really, we believe that engineers and whatever tools they're using should be the ones who are sort of hooking up the back end and doing all of the real, engineering work that still needs to be done.
So in terms of like the way that the code is output, if you work with Cursor, like one of the things that is evident is like there's a way that you use Cursor to build software. You also can't just, if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to make great production code.
Yep.
So when you're saying like designers can own the front end fully, I mean, is the code that Subframe produces, is it perfect? Does it still require code review? Maybe you can kind of talk to that.
From a visual standpoint, from, again, stylistic UI standpoint, it's quote unquote perfect because we don't even use AI to generate this code. This is fully programmatic. It's always going to be one to one. It's not going to try to do things that break the design, because what you're previewing here is exactly, again, the code that you're looking at. And so that's exactly how we build Subframe itself. And we use it in production in a very complex code base, right? That has a lot more in than just the UI. But yeah, that's really where we see sort of the lines. And I don't think it's about designers now and offloading, you know, actually building full stack engineering to AI. I think it's really just a shift that designers are designing interfaces, so they should just be building interfaces too. And most interfaces don't require that additional complexity.
So do you see, I mean, we've been talking a lot about designers. I mean, do you see that product managers should be inside an interface like this and prototyping away? Or is this like really just the visual component? Or can you make like features that work here, or if you wanted to make a feature that worked or became a prototype, what steps would you have to follow?
Yeah, let's do it. So why don't we let's start with here and go into AI mode. So we got a nice sidebar that opens. And the cool thing here is again the context. You can see right now that we are at referencing the current page. So the AI will be able to either make changes to it or create new pages based off of it. And everything, we only have 2 pages in this project, but as you build in Subframe, it is again fine-tuning, for lack of a better word, that AI engine for you to learn exactly how you design. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of that in action here. But let's go ahead, maybe take this page and imagine I don't know, do you have any feature ideas for fellow?
Let's see. I mean, so for example, right now the send button that exists there, that won't work, right? Because that's just a visual.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Why don't we try? Maybe that's easy to do. Maybe we can build a feature that will, when you press the send button, it opens up a dialog, and you can type a message, like any custom sort of message, type an email address, and then it'll send the meeting recap and agenda and whatever else directly to that person.
Cool. So for this, I would go ahead here, and the way I would prompt that is probably create, design a dialog that opens when I click the share button. In this dialog, I want to be able to write a message, fill out an email address, and also see the meeting transcript and video recording in a right sidebar as context. So we'll go ahead and send that off.
I'm
And
excited
again,
to see what it's going to do.
yeah, it's gonna start to again really try to obviously we have, we really have tried to make the AI good at design. But again, that context, the personalization is really where the difference happens. And so having the context about some of this page, what's on here, that's gonna help a lot. We also have sort of a system prompt that you can add here. I basically just put a bunch of stuff from your website, basically listing out features.
Oh, that's
Um,
so cool.
but this is kind of right, that master system prompt, like the true PRD for what you're building, including, features as well as design documentation. That's all going to be there. And we also have a concept of being able to save specific design elements to have AI use it, for as inspiration. And so I did that a little bit with a few of these snippets here. We call them snippets. Again, like something like this meeting tool card, you could just save it. All it takes, you just like right click, create snippet, and basically you're giving the AI little bits and pieces of, hey, this is a good pattern. This is, those treats that I was talking about.
Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the episode. One of the common things that we hear is, hey, you all talk about all these different tools, you walk through these demos. Sometimes it's hard for me to follow along. We decided to do recently was take all the things that we talk about, put them in a weekly newsletter. We literally list all the tools, we link to them, and any demo that we walk through, we break it down step by step, put it in this newsletter so it's super easy for you to follow along. And the other nice thing is that if there's someone on your team that you think could benefit, they're working on that subject area, they could use a little bit of AI injection into their workflow, send them the newsletter, send them that particular episode. We make it super easy to do that. It's free to sign up. All you have to do is go to thisnewway.com, enter your email address, and you'll get this weekly email from us. Hope you enjoy it. With that said, let's go back to the episode. So for everybody watching, I mean, you should be watching on Spotify or YouTube, but if you're not and you're listening, I'm just going to describe what I'm seeing. So again, very much like a chat GPT type interface on the right, and where we typed our prompt, and it's generating like 4 designs for images that look really cool. I assume we're about to zoom in on them, but Yeah, and so when you click on them, you can kinda see what these designs look like. So it's giving you just like you're working with a designer, it's saying like, "Here's some options. Here's what I came up with."
Exactly. And that's where we differ as well, right? Because we're still in that design mode, you're still exploring, you're a little bit more flexible, and we want to be that partner. We believe everyone should have that, not just sort of one shotting a slot machine, right, of changes. So, what you could do here, right, we do up to four different variations for you. And so I could go ahead and maybe this one feels like the best layout to start with. I could save this as a new page and we now have a new page on the left. But often what you might be doing, right? You talked with that designer and they're like, "Hey, this is cool, but I like this video kind of player here a little bit more." You could just drag that in. So I literally just dragged it in from the right and then delete the one I had because we're still in that design mode. So these aren't actually pictures, these are real designs that you can mix and match. And then, of course, go back to design mode and, go here, make your tweaks, whatever a designer does. But yeah, without even doing that, right, as a product manager or something, you were just able to create something and even choose from multiple ideas that are already using the design system and patterns that your designers would have set up for you.
What I also like about it is that by default, it has the visuals that Fellow has. So it really does feel native to what an experience might have looked like if we had one of our designers design this interface. So I love that. And it's very cool to see how things are evolving from a software development standpoint. And I can see it's almost like even for a designer, it's almost like they're working with these maybe junior designers or just regular designers, but that are just doing the work. You're thinking, okay, go get me 5 options. They come up with 5 options. You choose parts of design B and put it into design A, and then just collaborate like that.
Yeah. And now let's take this a little further, right? Because we're still working on that design layer here. But you actually asked to prototype it so that, when you actually press that button, we get this modal. This should probably fill out with whatever meeting, right? We are talking about here and probably have something updated here as well. So to create that prototype, something that we're probably used to with more AI code tools where, you're not designing, you're just chatting. We take an approach where because it's code, you should still be able to add that type of functionality and interactions to prototype things out, but we just have that design first approach. So what I'm going to do is basically go and create a flow for this. We'll call this our share meeting prototype. And I'm going to put this, I'm just going to duplicate it maybe and put this in here and put our share dialog in here, get rid of this page. And so now we have these two pages, right, sort of linked together in a prototype. And we might want to now kind of what usually happens in that handoff phase is designers go and start adding comments on what should happen, right, when you click on something or when it should appear. So when you go into our prototype mode, we let you do the same thing. We have another, again, chat interface if you do want to just talk and ask it to do things. But because you're already done with the design, usually to an extent, we let you also just annotate. So I can just click on this button and say, when I click this, open the share dialog context on top of this page and fill it out with the current meeting details, right? Something super simple. Maybe here we have do the same when I click this, click share. Also, open the share dialog when I click the share button. But we're going to ask it for some state, which is after I share this meeting in the dialog, hide this alert, right? Because it's already shared. And then we could go in here, do something similar where this should fill be pre-filled with info about the meeting being shared. Here maybe we say, let me fill out a message, etc. And maybe we'll do something. So this isn't actually a video right now, just this is an image. We could do something fun where we could say, show a actually I was gonna do a fun little prototype trick is to show like a webcam preview, but I think it might not work since we're being recorded right now. So
Uh-huh.
let's just do something here where that should be a video, but, I would have to give it, like, a file and stuff, so why don't I just say, when I press play, animate the transcript below, right? So, again, this is actually a lot of features, right? When you start
There's a
going
lot of features,
through,
yeah.
this is a lot, and that's because designs do contain so many features. They have a lot of context already, and it's really hard to just iterate into everything one by one. If you already have the design, you might be able to just, again, add a bunch of these prompts all at once. So this kind of innovated on this, which is like, how do you prompt multiple things at the same time visually? And that's exactly what we're doing here, which is lastly, when I press send, close the, dialog and update the meeting page that it's shared. So hopefully we're gonna do something here that works. We don't really have a transcript here, so maybe it will just make it up. I could also go back here just real quick. I could go in and right here in line, I could just say generate a transcript for this meeting. And I could also just prompt AI right there in the middle, still in design mode.
For people listening in, it's almost like you get a Google Doc and you're the manager, you're reading this document and you're just leaving comments. It just looks like that, except you're leaving comments on an actual interface. And except the comments aren't change this text, it's go build this feature. And so, okay, so now we have like all these feature requests or feature annotations. Does this stuff actually go get built in the background?
Yep. So I just hit build for this prototype. It's going to take these designs that we already have as code. It's going to take all of these prompts that we've added contextually, and it's going to start to build a real web app. Again, we call it a prototype because it's not actually connected to, your backend. But it's going to be the equivalent of working, with AI code tools like your Lovable, your Bolts, your V zeros, but it's using your design system. It's taking those exact designs and, you could do it sort of in that same place, right?
This is again, like it really does feel like the future of prototyping. And I can see designers, PMs, just anyone on the team. Like anytime I have my pet feature request that I want the team to work on, I can build my own prototype now, and it's going to look good. And it's going to more important than looking good is it's going to have the native look and feel.
Yeah. Demos, user testing, the whole pictures is worth 1,000. Prototype is worth 1,000 PRDs, right? But I do think where there's no excuse not to have the fidelity anymore that it feels real, right? There's no reason. I hear from designers all the time. They have, it's probably their worst nightmare these days is a PM who comes to them with a lovable prototype and says, "Hey, I designed this. It's done. Can you, fix it?" And it's like, what are they supposed to do with that? It's a completely different artifact that now you have to go through another mental loop of how do I take the actual ideas here? How do I translate it back to our design system and our
Yeah.
design patterns? And then they're going to just do that all over again with an engineer, right? And
Yeah.
I think just collapsing that so everyone's building software just at that right stage and the fidelity that they need. That's really where I think the future is going.
And if for people listening in, it's the goal here is to kind of open everyone's eyes onto how software is getting built these days. If you work at a company and your PMs are still writing these documents, then they should be prototyping. But if their prototypes also don't look anything like your software, like that's another kind of gap. And so this is kind of the future. And again, like this is what software building can look like. And everybody's looking for efficiencies. Everyone's looking to do more with less. This is how you can pull it off. You just have to compress all of these functions and stages and reduce the transition time. And yeah, it's super exciting to see what you guys have done here. So it's building and like it's writing a lot of code.
Yeah, the first pass, the first build is usually, again, slower because it really has to set up a lot of that infrastructure. I mean, we asked it for a bunch of stuff, but then if you do make changes or you change the design and sync it back, that's usually a lot faster. So, this should be identical to the design, right? You wouldn't even know it's different, but we are now in that actual web app. Let's go ahead, click share. This now works. Looks like right. It got some of our at least the title of the meeting, right? Fill out the context. Let's see, I could say, hey, check this out. I can actually type in here, fellow.go. And then we asked it for this little play button. All right, looks like it just did a little subtle animation. So not maybe exactly what I would have prompted as a designer, but then we can actually close it, and our alert, right, was hidden. And so yeah, we took something that really was static or that would take probably like at least 50 prompts, right? If you were truly starting from an AI code tool, and are now in a state that we can actually work with. So it's really easy to follow from there to change the designs, make edits. But yeah, this is now something that we also have the code for. Again, the code is using the same components that you would be using and syncing to your design system. So even though an engineer might probably not, use the exact logic here, it's something that is really translatable to the software, to your code base that you're working with.
So basically, you can export and then take this to Cursor,
Yep,
take it to whatever GitHub, whatever your next steps are in the build process.
exactly. Great. We can, yeah, leave it here. I can send you this too. Of course, this is shareable, right? But yeah, I'll definitely have to get this project to you so that you can start to take it to the finish line.
Oh, I think my designers are gonna love it. I'm like, I was on a podcast and we built a feature. So no, it's very, very cool. This is kind of where work is going. We're showing this in software, but you can kind of take a step back in any traditional function where there's multiple people involved. Like even thinking about this podcast, right? So, there's like the podcast, there's the scripting of the questions, there's like the editing, there's like even in that world, I'm seeing all of those steps compress, and so one person is able to handle the whole thing. And so we're seeing this in software too. And more, I think now designers can do a lot. Designers can be front end developers. And so this is super cool to see. The final question, Phil, we always like to end on is in the next 12 months, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm really excited to just see more ideas created into the world. I think AI slop, while it's sort of a sad reality of getting to a place where so many more ideas can exist. I think that's a worthwhile trade-off right now because I think with just more access to people be able to build their ideas, to go out, right, and start companies or build products that they want to see or build little apps for your friends. I think that's going to be, you know, what I like to see is something like that, those earlier days of the internet, right? Where you would just kind of stumble on little corners of it. And so I think sort of more of a decentralized, software landscape, and more players in the game, I think is great for everyone.
I totally agree with you. This idea of AI slop is a term that is used by the incumbent class, call it like the people that want to keep doing things the old way. And, there's like a little bit of truth, a kernel of truth somewhere in there. But it's like largely, let's come up with a term where we can keep doing things the old way and prevent the future from arriving. But the future is here. we saw a glimpse of it. So Phil, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to follow along with what you're doing. And yeah, I can't wait for some updates to follow, maybe some new features.
All right. Thanks, Phil.
Cool. Have a good one. Bye.
And that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of This New Way. If you like the content, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you can get notified when we post the next episode. See you next time.